Hi guys, and welcome to the final chapter of my top 100 horror movies of all time ranking. I did consider making this one 3D, like Saw, the final chapter, but then I thought that probably not as many people would watch the video if I did that, so we'll stick to 2D. Incidentally, you'll find all my other episodes covering 100th to 21st in my rankings playlist. But today we're finishing things off. We're going from 20th to 1st, so let's not muck about. Let's dive into it. We'll start with the film that I consider to be my 20th favourite horror movie of all time. At number 20, we have Alien 3. This is up 7 places from 27, so this continues to age like a fine wine. I don't care that Hicks and Newt die at the start. That does not offend me at all. When I try and imagine this film with them in it, it's a worse movie. I think it would have just become too much of a family-friendly thing featuring characters who have got plot armour. It was a bold move killing those characters off, but I think it was absolutely right for this story. When this first came out, I was kind of lukewarm on it. I thought it was okay, but it was the special edition in the noughties that really made me a fan. That extra half an hour that they added in for the director's cut just makes this film, it just makes it more emotional when you get to the end of it because you get extra time to learn who all the characters are. And there's some cracking characters in this film. You don't need Hicks and Newt. I can't remember the name of the guy who plays Dylan, but that's an amazing character. Charles Dance, Brian Glover, Pete Postlethwaite, some absolutely terrific actors. It just make this film so good. And it's a film that I've enjoyed in other media as well. I read the Alien 3 novel a while back, and I would say it's one of the better movie to novel attempts I've seen in this series. And I used to be a massive fan of the Alien 3 video game back in the 90s, specifically the Master System one. Surely one of the best ever games to be on Master System. That was fantastic. So yeah, I really love Alien 3, and I think that's becoming less and less of a controversial opinion as the years go by. At number 19, we have a new entry, Black Christmas. Now, this one was unlucky not to get into my ranking 5 years ago. I think what happened was I did the ranking and then I watched Black Christmas for the first time about a week later. And I distinctly remember thinking, okay, so if I do this ranking again one day, then Black Christmas is definitely going in. And here we are. It's debuting in the top 20, a terrific slasher film. I can't believe I went as far through my life as I did without seeing this because it's so good. It takes place mostly in a sorority house and nobody knows that the killer is hiding in the attic very close by the whole time, and it's incredibly creepy how he calls up his victims on the phone and makes all these silly noises, and you never really get to see his face properly, which just makes him even scarier. Structured brilliantly, this, honestly, with an absolutely terrific ending. I don't know why they keep on insisting on remaking this. The 2006 one I haven't actually seen. I've heard that it's passable, but not much more than that. The 2019 one is almost universally panned. I actually went to see that one at the cinema. Yeah, I paid money to watch that. But you know what? I don't want to spend time in my top 20 best horror movies of all time video talking about Black Christmas 2019. So let's move swiftly on. At number 18, we have The Night House. This is another new entry. I took a punt on this one at the cinema and I was handsomely rewarded. This is an absolutely terrific movie. So it's about this woman who lives on her own in this fancy house next to like the Chesapeake Bay or somewhere like that. Her husband has recently shot himself and she's got no idea why, because as far as she was concerned, they had a happy life. But in her grief, she starts to find little clues around the house and in the surrounding woodlands as to what might have been going through her husband's head in the build-up to his death. And I'm not going to take the film any further than that, but it's really creative, this. It must have taken some imagination to come up with this film. It's very psychological in nature. There are several different ways that you can interpret the film once you get to the end. I've rewatched this a few times now. It's available on Disney, or at least it was the last time I checked. But I keep picking up little new bits of things every time I watch it. It's so good. There's one particular jump scare in the cinema that when it happened, the guy next to me, it was like he'd been hit by a bolt of lightning. Suddenly, like, arms and limbs were all over the place. He didn't know what to do with his body, and I was like, "Oh, calm down, kid." But yeah, this film is so good. At number 17, we have The Fog. This is down 4 places from 13, and to tell you the truth, I'm a little bit dejected about that. Any kind of drop for The Fog is just not on, in my opinion. Did I really do that? Let me check my notebook here. Yeah, I definitely did that. That's clearly my signature, so I signed off on it, but what a classic movie. I first saw it back in the 90s. From the minute that old geezer, he's sat around the campfire telling that tale of Blake and his gold, that that Captain Birdseye type guy. As soon as he does that, I'm immediately immersed in the world of Antonio Bay and its citizens. Tom Atkins is brilliant in this film. Jamie Lee's in it as well. There's not a lot of action in it, but it's more about the atmosphere and the mood and the incredible soundtrack. That lighthouse location is just fantastic to look at. And somehow Carpenter comes up with an end to this movie which is every bit as brilliant and memorable as what he did at the end of Halloween. I've never seen the remake. I've no interest in seeing the remake. I just love this first one, and may that be the case for all time. I don't need any sequels or anything else to this. But yeah, I have put it down 4 places. I guess when I was making my top 100, my brain must have been enveloped in fog. At number 16, we have Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. This is up a massive 60 places from 76. This is possibly the most controversial film in my entire top 100. In fact, I'm willing to bet that at least one person will not be able to resist mentioning in the comments that I have included this in some kind of negative way. But this is a good a time as any to remind you that this is a personal list. I'm not trying to be IMDb's top 100. This is entirely me, my brain, my particular horror loves, and I've had a love affair with Jason Takes Manhattan going back to 1993 when I first saw this movie. It was on TV this one night. I think it was on after the US Open Golf. I stayed up really late to watch this, and it just blew me away. I was young enough back then to get genuinely scared by these sorts of movies. These days I get mildly creeped at best, usually, but for about 3 days after watching this film, I was walking around in a daze. It had such an effect on me. I just absolutely loved it. And I'm not bothered that it's mostly set on a boat. Like, some people get really hung up about that, but it's a bit like the Hicks and Newt thing. It's like, yeah, if you got your wish, you would have got a much worse film, because they didn't have a massive amount of money for this. So the idea of Jason running around in those alleyways in New York for 90 minutes doesn't sound massively appealing. I think the boat stuff makes this movie, and then the New York extras at the end, just, it's like the cream on top of a brilliant cake. And lots of great characters as well, from Wayne to the cynical teacher. He's so funny. And Julius, me and a friend in the 90s, when I showed him this film, we were just chuckling at some of Julius's lines all night. School is out, McCullough. And the final girl has got one of the best backstories, I think, of any heroine in this entire series. As to why I only put the film 76th 5 years ago, that's very curious to me, because I've always loved this film. So it's not like it's suddenly risen up recently. You know what I think might have happened? So 5 years ago, I would have been relatively new to YouTube. I wonder if I just didn't have any confidence back then. Maybe when I was writing my list, maybe I thought, oh, people are going to be watching this. Not sure about letting them know how much I love Friday the 13th Part 8. Maybe if I just put it low down at like 76, maybe they won't take me to task on that, and they'll just focus on the higher part of the list. Yeah, I think I'll do that. But 5 years further on, and I've got to a point now with the channel and stuff that I don't really give a shite what people think about my opinions of films, in all honesty. So here it is, Friday the 13th Part 8 in my top 20. Deal with it. At 15, we have Asylum. This is down 3 places from 12. This is the only Amicus film in the ranking. It's pretty much the only horror anthology film in the ranking, although technically we did have Tales of Halloween coming in at 96. But I'm willing to bet that if I do this list again 5 years from now, Tales of Halloween might just fall off the edge of the map to make way for new movies, but that's never going to happen to Asylum. I won't live long enough to see 100 horror films better than this. This is really amazing. As to why it's managed to separate itself from the rest of the anthology pack, for me, mainly the wraparound tale. So we've got this guy played by Robert Powell, and he turns up at this asylum, and he's got to go from room to room listening to all the stories from each patient as to how they ended up in the asylum. And once this character, Dr. Martin, I think his name is, if I've remembered it right, once he gets to the end of the process, there are only 4 rooms to go through. It's a very small asylum. He's got to guess which of these patients is the former manager at the asylum. And if he gets this right, then he himself will get the chance to be the new manager. So it's kind of like an interactive movie, because at home you can sort of play along and guess yourself which of these patients is the manager. And the film, or the former manager, the film doesn't completely confirm who it is. It does try and nudge you in the direction of one particular person, but it doesn't completely say with great authority, this is the person. So you can sort of come up with your own theories about who it might be, and certainly I've got mine, and I went into this when I did my Asylum review. But I just love the linking narrative of this film. I just think it's really well thought out, and I've never seen another wraparound quite like it in any other horror anthology. And the 4 individual stories are brilliant too. It's not like there's 1 or 2 middling ones. They're all great. I just love each and every one of them. So that, in a nutshell, is why Asylum is so fab. Oh, and Britt Ekland's in it as well. At number 14, we have Scream. This is down 12 places from 2. Yes, this was the runner-up 5 years ago. In fact, I can remember not being sure whether to give the highest spot to Scream or the film that won. And it was very close. Scream almost was crowned my favourite horror film 5 years ago. It missed out by a very fine margin. And yet here we are now talking about it as only my 14th favourite horror film. So what's happened? I think a lot of it may be to do with the current state of the franchise. So if we go back to when Scream 5 came out, I loved that film. It is, right now, my favourite sequel. And then they announced Scream 6, which was going to be set in New York. And I love slasher films set in New York, so I was totally up for that. I thought that 6 might even top 5, just based on how they were selling it. And then the film was not that. In fact, it was so much worse. For me, Scream 6 is the only bad film in the franchise. No, 3 is not a bad film. But not only was 6 bad, but then we had the whole fallout with the 2 main stars leaving and the studio just being dicks and not looking after their own, and suddenly everything's in disarray, and it's like, what are they doing here? Seriously, what is going on? Why have they lost the plot with this whole thing? And I think all this has kind of fed into my opinion of the original film as well. It shouldn't, but a ranking is very illogical. It's based on thoughts and feelings, and when you're trying to sort 100 films that you love into a certain order, and all the films are separated by mere millimeters because you love them all, then it becomes a very difficult thing to do. And I do think that some of the shithousery that's gone on with Scream has kind of fed into the orbit of the original Scream a little bit. That's not how it should work, but I think it may have done a little bit. And so I'm maybe not in the greatest of places with this franchise at the moment. But Scream 7 is coming out next month, as it happens, and Neve Campbell is back in the lead role. So I've got every reason to believe that this could be the comeback film that Scream so desperately needs right now. So who knows? If I do this again 5 years from now, maybe the original Scream will bounce back into the top 10 at least, where it probably deserves to be with me. At number 13, we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. This is down 9 places from number 4. There's no real reason for that. It's just kind of happened. I think I was in my early 20s when I saw this for the first time, and it left a hell of a mark on me because I don't think I'd ever seen a film quite like this. It just feels so real and raw. So we've got this group of youngsters who are traveling in this camper van across Texas, and they stumble into this farm full of maniacs led by this one particular guy who's got a mask and a chainsaw. But it's like there's an invisible camera in the sky just documenting all this as if it's a bunch of actual events playing out. It doesn't actually feel like a movie a lot of the time. It's brilliant. And there's no movie bullshit in this. There's no second chances for characters. There's no secret crawl spaces under the house that they can use. There's no convenient cop who shows up to bail anybody out. Generally, when characters approach the house in this film, they die, as is what would happen in real life. And it's not really until the final girl, 10 minutes from the end, where there's any kind of resistance. And just this amazing chase sequence between Sally, the main protagonist, and Leatherface. It's so well filmed. Like, at any moment in this chase, it just feels like he's going to get her. He's always like an inch away, and then he can never quite get her. But at the same time, it never looks like the actor Gunnar Hansen is actually deliberately letting her get away, as happens at least once during the reboot film, sadly. And the ending out on the, I can't call it a highway, out on the country road with the incredible chaos that's going on, just fantastic. The series did go on a little bit of a tailspin after the original. 2, 3, and 4 are all bad films. I can't stand that stretch of Texas Chainsaw Massacres. And when the reboot came out in 2003, things improved from then forwards. I can watch all of those films after that. So this series, it does feel like it's sort of recovered over time, but it's not like the movies post-reboot are ever going to be in my top 100. But this original film, absolute stone cold classic. At number 12, we have a new entry. It's Aliens. The reason this is a new entry is because 5 years ago I decided that this film was not eligible to be in my ranking on the basis that it's kind of like a science fiction action film and maybe not a horror. But I've reconsidered my position and I have now decided to let Aliens into the list. I just don't think that you can have all the other Alien films being allowed into this and just singling out one of them, Aliens, as being banned just because it has a high quota of action in it. It doesn't seem right to me, especially when there's so much horror in Aliens. I mean, this was just the stuff of nightmares for me when I was a kid, and I've always loved it. I've seen it probably 20 times in my life, and that's a conservative estimate. So I am now saying that any Aliens films are now allowed in my top 100 horrors. Another film that I've been thinking about letting into this is the original Terminator. I haven't on this occasion, but that's another one where I'm thinking it could qualify as horror. Do let me know in the comments if you think I should be allowed to include Terminator in this. Because in 5 or 6 years' time when I do this again, I may change my stance. But for now, the way I've done it is by saying an entire franchise is either in or out. So all of Aliens is now in, and as it stands, all the Terminator films are not eligible, but maybe I will unlock Terminator at some point, mainly because of the original film. I just think that film would add so much quality to my top 10, top 20 of horror if I was to include it. I mean, the end scene in Terminator when Arnie's robot is going through the factory chasing after Michael Biehn and I forget Linda Hamilton. I mean, that scenario is just the stuff of nightmares. You won't find any better horror scenes than that. It's just such a scary thing. So yeah, this is something I'm going to have to ponder. But for now, we at least have Aliens coming into the list at number 12, and what a great film it is. At number 11, just missing out on the top 10, is The Ring, the American version. This is up 40 places from number 51. Yeah, the last time that I watched this, I did have this little moment of clarity just after the end credits where I realised I would have to put this one a hell of a lot higher than 51 the next time I did my horror ranking. It was about a year ago that I did my Ring review series. I watched and reviewed all 11 films. That was heavy going, believe me. There's not a lot of quality in those 11 films. This version of The Ring right here stands head and shoulders above all the rest, even better than the Japanese original. You could say that it's a little bit unfair that this remake is something that I have so much love for, whereas the Japanese original is just kind of, yeah, it's an okay horror film, but it's just a fact that the Americans remade the movie and made it a hell of a lot better. But I just love this story. It's one of the great horror stories of all time. I love the whole legend of Samara and the well and the creepy videotape that gets found in this film. I love all those images that are spliced together. Naomi Watts gives a career best performance here, even better than the one she gives in Children of the Corn 4. Just kidding, but this is an amazing film and I absolutely love it. Right, it is time to progress onto my top 10 horror movies of all time. So let's dive in and see what we've got in the treasure chest. Let's see what we've got at number 10. At number 10, we have Candyman. So whereas other great horror films like Scream and Texas Chainsaw have exited the top 10, Candyman stubbornly hangs on. It was 10 last time. It's 10 this time, so it's a non-mover. I first saw this on a cold, wintry night at the start of 1993, over 30 years ago now, and the movie scared the crap out of me. I didn't even know what this film was when my cousin put it on, but the minute it got going, I was absolutely riveted, and I felt like I was in a trance when I was on my way home after watching this film. It's incredible. I'm not going to give you a plot synopsis for this. I'm sure you know what Candyman is about, but this supernatural killer played by Tony Todd, he is absolutely frightening. He's one of them, I'm just not sure you could ever really recast him. It's a little bit like Freddy Krueger. It's like, can you ever have anybody else play the part? You know, and the whole world setting here, Cabrini Green, this like poor area of big tower blocks, it's scary just of itself. And such a great ending to this film, frightening and yet exhilarating at the same time. Such a great soundtrack in this film. I love that piano piece that plays all the way through. It's really haunting. As for the rest of this series, I rented number 2 in the 90s, and I actually think it's all right. It's watchable. The third one, I've never seen at all. I've heard that it's really low budget and a complete insult to Tony Todd, who was still in that. As for the remake, reboot, I saw that at the cinema a few years ago, and despite the fact that it's clearly got at least as big a budget as any previous Candyman movie, I thought it was a bit of a misfire, sadly. At number 9, we have Triangle. This is up a massive 64 places from 73. So to give you a very quick story summary, we've got a group of people who are in a sailboat and they capsize somewhere off the coast of Australia, I think. And they're basically saved when this cruise ship just passes by. But once they climb up on board, they realise there's nobody on this massive ship. I mean, it's enormous. It's almost as big as the Titanic. And what follows is this weird set of circumstances where we have like time loops and the warping of reality. And I'm not going to take the story any further, but just watch this. Honestly, it's absolutely brilliant. It's probably the most clever horror film I've ever seen. That's a bold statement, but I'll stand by it. The first time I watched this, I knew it was a good film, but I don't think I realised just how good it was. And in the meantime, I put the film at 73 when I did that horror ranking. But I've seen this more and more over the last 5 years, and now I'm ready to sort of shoot it up into my top 10 of all time because it really is that good. There's a whole website dedicated to this film, just explaining the intricacies of the plot scene by scene and how it all connects and stuff. It's such a complex piece of work for a 90-minute movie. This is not something just to be watched, it's something to be studied and pondered in the aftermath. And when a film can have that effect, you're dealing with something very, very powerful. So yeah, I'm very proud to put Triangle into my top 10. This film is criminally unknown and criminally unseen. At number 8, we have As Above, So Below. This is up 17 places from 25, largely due to the fact that I just can't seem to stop watching it year in, year out. It's one of those go-to comfort films for me. I've watched it quite a few times at this point. This is unofficially the best Tomb Raider movie. If you fancy a bit of Tomb Raider, don't watch those ones with Jolie or the reboot one. Watch As Above, So Below. It's a great film. It's about this young woman. She's in her 20s. I don't know how she's being funded in this film. Seemingly, she's got plenty of money to just fly around the world to places like Iran and France. She doesn't need to work. She can just go looking for lost artifacts at her leisure, just like Lara Croft then. She doesn't have twin pistols in this film, but those wouldn't do her any good anyway, because the threat in this is largely supernatural. So she's in Paris looking for the Rosetta Stone, I think, and she hires these guides, and she's got this mate of hers from way back, and they all go under the ground down into the catacombs, and it gets really claustrophobic. They're crawling through really small tunnels with not much light, and the further they go, you're just thinking, oh my God, are they going to be able to get back out of this place? It's like a maze. It's like a warren. It's like you just wouldn't go down there, would you? And even though I'm sure the actors weren't actually way down below the streets of Paris, it looks like they are for the purposes of this movie. So it's damn scary. The plot is really good as well. There's some twists and surprises in this further along the way. And I'm really sad that this film didn't make more of a splash when it came out, because I really love this main character. I think she's fantastic. I love her enthusiasm for anything like artifact related. She's really devoted to her little crusade. And I would have loved it if she had had a little series where we would have had sequels where she goes to different places around the world looking for this or that. That would have been fantastic. But as it is, it's just this one film. But if you've never seen it, I honestly, this is absolutely worth an evening of your time. At number 7, we have The Blair Witch Project. This is up 2 places from number 9. This might not have been the first found footage film ever made, but it was probably the first that everybody saw at some point. It's a very divisive film. There are people like me who will swear by it, even put it in my top 10 horrors of all time, etc., etc. But there are other people for whom this film did absolutely nothing for. Maybe they found it really boring. But for me, the key component in its effectiveness is not the fact that it's found footage. It's the fact that you never see the evil force behind what's going on. I'd never seen a film that did that before, and I just found it to be absolutely genius. I watched this for the first time when I was 19 in my university campus room, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning. It was dark. I had the lights off. It was the perfect setting to watch this movie for the first time, and it was a hell of an experience. I absolutely loved it. Those scenes late at night where the campers just hear the voices in the distance, but they never get to the bottom of it, so genuinely terrifying. Even the scenes in the daytime feel really oppressive, like the trees are closing in somehow, and you just realise after a point that it's not the characters' bad orienteering skills that have led to their predicament, that there's something supernatural going on. Somehow they keep getting turned around in the woods, and the ending is an all-timer, as long as you've been paying attention to the dialogue earlier on in the movie, that is. Blair Witch 2 is an absolute train wreck of a movie. Let's not mince our words. The third one I really like. That's worth watching. It's not as good as the original, but it's a good film, and if I'm watching the first one, I'll definitely consider watching the third one not long afterwards. Another piece of recommended Blair Witch Media, though, is the video game, which came out on PlayStation 4 2017, I want to say. One of the scariest games I've ever played in my life, and I've played a lot of horror in video games. It's scarier than Resident Evil, trust me. Just absolutely brilliant. I can't recommend it enough. You can probably get it quite cheap now, like £15, $15, $20 maybe, I don't know, but it's definitely the best thing in this series after the original film. At number 6, we have The Thing. This is down one place from number 5. So I will be rewatching this film shortly, actually, because my son, my oldest son, he turns 15 at the end of March, and me and my wife have both agreed that when he turns 15, that's when he can start watching horror movies. And he's chosen The Thing as his first. I gave him a few different ideas, and he's gone for The Thing. So that's going to be a really interesting experience watching that film with him. My first experience of this was not very good. So it was back in the 90s, and The Thing was on TV one Saturday night, I think. But I wanted to watch the football highlights, which were on at the same time as the movie. So I kept flicking between the two. Not the ideal way to go about it. I can distinctly remember seeing a goal going in and then thinking, oh, I wonder what's going on in the movie, and then flicking over and it was Palmer going, you gotta be kidding. And then you just see like this alien creature on the floor, and I was like, oh wow, that's pretty impressive. Right, back to the football. I'll see what the cool creatures are in the film later on, but back to the football for now. Yeah, just back forth, and you can't watch a movie properly that way. I shouldn't have done that, but I didn't know that the film was such a classic. I thought it was just some random creature feature that they were putting on, you know. But obviously in the years afterwards, I watched the film properly and I realised how great it is. It's one of those incredible films where you can just discuss theories about what's going on in the background that you can't see, you know, who gets infected, when and where in the movie. People have got different opinions. I don't mind the prequel as much as some people. I think once you get your head around the fact that they're using CGI, it's actually a pretty good film, in my opinion. But certainly when it comes to this classic first one, well, technically it's not the first one. There was one in the 1950s, which a lot of people forget. But this Carpenter one is a film that I don't think I will get many complaints about the fact that I've included it in my ranking. At number 5, we have The Descent. This is up 3 places from number 8. This film is the absolute bollocks. I love it. 6 women go cave exploring in the Appalachians, and they get lost in this labyrinth of underground caves, and they desperately need to find a way out. This film is pretty damn horrific, even before the creatures turn up. But once they get added to the mix, then it just becomes absolute bedlam. But it's such a great film, honestly. I don't think it's a coincidence that I've got 2 movies in my top 10 that both feature people crawling around in dark caves. Clearly that does something for me. I like the fact that it's all women, by the way. It just adds an air of realism to this film. We've just had The Thing at number 6, which was all men, and now straight away we have this all-female film, so a nice little bit of duality in the middle of my top 10. That wasn't deliberate. I literally just noticed that. But The Descent is not just about the horror. There's also this subplot about adultery going on in the background, and it just adds an extra layer of emotion to the whole film. The second one is watchable, I suppose, but completely inessential. Effectively, it's a DLC type movie, a bit like Demons 2. If you want to check it out, fine, but you're not missing anything if you don't watch it. The ending of The Descent in the UK is different from the ending of the US version, or at least it was last time I checked. It's been 20 years since this film came out. Please tell me you are watching the correct version in America by now, and you've got rid of that ridiculous alternate cut that was doing the rounds back in the day. Why, Americans? Why? At number 4, we have Silent Hill. This is up 3 places from number 7. I think some people might raise an eyebrow that I've included this so high, but I've got a long history with Silent Hill. I used to love the video games back in the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 days. I played the original trilogy for Silent Hill, and I loved those games. So by the time that the 2006 film came out, I was chomping at the bit to see it. I couldn't wait to see how this series would look on the big screen. I dragged my friend to the cinema to see it with me, who never played any of the games, and from memory, I think he thought it was okay. Very complicated plot, though, which I'm not even going to begin to describe right now. But when I came out of the cinema, I remember hearing one woman say to her partner, "Well, I didn't have a clue what was going on in the final half an hour." Yes, it is a little bit tricky on a first-time watch with this film, with all the flashbacks and trying to figure out what's going on with this and that. It's one of those films, a bit like Triangle at number 9, where you're rewarded for multiple watches of the movie. The mist seems to clear, or the fog, I should say, given that it's Silent Hill. The fog seems to clear a bit as to what the deal is with this world and its characters a lot more every time you watch the movie. I've seen it countless times. I gave it 5 out of 5 when I did my review. It is an absolute masterpiece of a film for me. I love the pyramid head creature. All the imagery you see in this film is super cool. I think the CGI has aged quite well with this movie as well. The scene in the bathroom with the weird perverted janitor with his arms tied behind his back, like crawling across the floor. And every time the world changes from the normal world to the hellscape, those are really creepy scenes when you've got the siren blaring away and you can't even see it. And yeah, I could wax lyrical about Silent Hill all day long. It's just something that is me through and through. It's not for everybody, but I think it's the best game to movie adaptation of all time, personally. The second film, Silent Hill Revelation, is not as good. I only gave that 2.5 out of 5 when I reviewed it. It is pretty disappointing. But there is a third film coming out next week, actually, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that because it's the director from the first one coming back again 20 years further on. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to turn out there. I think it's an adaptation of the Silent Hill 2 game, which, well, I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with this. So possibly I might do a review of it too. At number 3, we have a non-mover. It's Dawn of the Dead. I cannot fathom why people sometimes claim that the remake is better than the Romero original. And there are quite a lot of people out there, actually, who think the reimagining is better than this one. I like Army of the Dead, which was the sequel to the reboot. But the actual reboot itself, I didn't think it was that great, personally. It's okay, but nothing special, and certainly nowhere near the standard of this 78 one. I first saw it back in the 90s. It was on TV really late one night, and I just fell in love with it from the off. This whole scenario of 4 people landing in a helicopter on top of a shopping mall, and then they slowly try and make the place their own. They barricade it perfectly. They've got it all figured out, and then it's just ruined by other humans. This is basically the whole premise of The Walking Dead that went on for like 200 episodes, wasn't it? Except here it's just all condensed into like 2 hours and a bit. But it's a great film. I've got hardly any criticism. There is one thing. The colour of the blood. I would just darken it slightly. It looks a bit ridiculous, the light red colour that it is. But this film is astonishingly good. I love the scene where all the bikers get their comeuppance, or at least some of them. And what else can you say about Dawn of the Dead? It is easily, for me, the best zombie film of all time. And I've got it, obviously, at number 3 in my list of best horror films, period, of all time. But it's now time to find out what is the runner-up in this ranking. Let's find out what is my number 2. At number 2, we have Halloween. This was the winner 5 years ago. It has been dethroned, and we will find out what film dethroned it in a minute. I'm a massive fan of this series, not just the original, but all the films pretty much. But this is the only one I've included in my top 100, which just goes to show the depth of horror now. Like, there's so much great horror out there that I don't even need to include any sequels from one of my favourite horror franchises of all time. I'm happy to just have the original in my top 100. I'm not going to say too much about this movie in general because what else is there to say about it? I watched it for the first time on Halloween night of 1993. The date is very easy for me to remember. And I still had a black and white TV in my bedroom at that time. So my first viewing of Halloween was in black and white, and it's damn scary with the colour taken away. If there's any way to use AI or something to mess around on a PC and change this film into black and white, do it, because it's a really cool way to watch this movie. In terms of where we are with this franchise in 2026, there's no more movies on the horizon, not even being discussed. As far as I'm aware, there are some loose whispers of a TV show around the corner, but I don't think that's coming anytime soon. Certainly not this year, I wouldn't have thought. But one thing that is coming out this year is the video game, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a multiplayer game. It's going to be one of those where you'll get like one person playing Michael, and then another 4 people will play various babysitters, and then you'll have a match in like a neighborhood or whatever. In other words, a carbon copy of what Friday the 13th did 6 or 7 years ago with that game. And I used to love that game. I met so many cool people playing that game. I think the same company that did Friday the 13th is doing this Halloween game, so they should be well practiced in how to make a go of this. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to it. And it's coming out a day after my birthday. So my birthday's September the 7th. I think the game is coming out September the 8th. So I'm not even going to have to pay for it. I'm just going to say to my wife, I want this for my birthday. It's coming out a day after my birthday, though. So on my actual birthday, you've just got to get me a card, and that's fine. And then get me the game the following day. That's how it's going to work, I think. So yeah, I do think that the video game is going to be the big thing for the Halloween franchise, certainly in the next year or two. And maybe at some point down the line, somebody will brave another reboot, but that time is still a while away yet. But this first film, it's legendary. What more is there to say about it? But we've now reached the point where I declare my favourite horror film of all time. Let's find out what it is. Just before I put the slide up, I can tell you it has risen from 6th 5 years ago to first place. Let's see what it is. Yep, at number 1 we have Alien. Now, even though it's been 5 years since I last did a top 100 horror ranking, 2 years ago, I think, I did a top 100 films from all genres, and Alien won that as well. So if you've been following the channel a while and you remember that collection of videos that I did, then maybe it's no surprise that Alien is also winning this list, but it's an absolutely phenomenal film for me. I didn't instantly think it was like the greatest thing since sliced bread. I thought it was a really top-notch horror when I first saw it in the 90s, but it's taken quite a long time for it to slowly rise up and be my absolute favourite. If I'd have done a top 100 horror films at the end of the 90s, say, I'm not even sure Alien would have made the top 10 or top 20. It would have made the 100, probably, but it wouldn't have been in the upper reaches. This has been a slow burn that's been happening over 3 decades with this film. It used to be that I preferred Aliens, actually, when I was much younger. And then for quite a long time, in my 20s and 30s, Alien and Aliens were very level. And actually, if you do a poll out there among Alien fans, it will be quite split, I think, between the first one and the second one. But what propelled the first one into being way ahead of the sequel for me is when I played Alien Isolation, the video game, about 10 years ago, because that game uses a lot of the aesthetics of the original film. And that game, and it's my favourite game of all time, I'll tell you that, it just made me love the original film even more than I did. And now we've got this clear gap between Alien and Aliens, although I still love Aliens as well. But yeah, this is my number 1. So I guess we did it. We've arrived at the end of my top 100 horror films ranking. I've been doing this since the beginning of December, I think, or the end of November. I can't remember now, but we're well into January. It's taken me sort of 6 or 7 weeks, something like that. But I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you enjoyed watching it at home. And I'm sure there were many films along the way where you thought, what is he doing? But I presume a lot of other films as well where you thought, yeah, Definitely right there, Mr. Woodsman. So, yeah, after this, I'll be back to doing the bog standard film reviews for a while. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to remember how to do a review. It's been, or it feels like it's been that long, but I'll see if I can figure it out. But for now, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye-bye.